And I remember like being, like insecure about taking up space with my tears. Even though I talk about this, I was like insecure of taking up the space of like being vulnerable and showing like how off I felt. Welcome to Flip the Inner Script, a podcast for female founders who are over their inner critic showing up when they are scaling to bigger things. This podcast is for the woman who has built something and still finds herself wondering why success doesn't feel the way she thought it would. We'll dive deep into inner stories, social conditioning, self-leadership, identity, and what it actually takes to master being the woman who meets her next level. This is your permission slip to finally flip the script so that you can unlock the success you dream about. Let's go. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Flip the Inner Script, also known as Shut That Inner Bitch Up. I got to tell you, I went back and forth as to whether or not I actually wanted to make that the title of the show, but I decided to like dull it down a little bit so that people can like come in, subscribe to the show, download a few episodes, listen a little bit so they could get to know me before they realize, how much of a like lay it all out on the table, say it like it is, sometimes polished, sometimes unpolished. I'm just a sweary human being. And quite honestly, I've heard research that says that people who use more foul language, I'm using air quotes, are actually more trustworthy and more authentic, because it's just like they're not here to censor themselves. They are just here, and this is me. I'm just here to tell it like it is, show you like it is. So anyway, flip the inner script, shut that inner bitch up. I will respond to either of those things. I'm really excited for today's episode because I feel like in the last 8 weeks, I have really unlocked something in my reality. The way that I have been showing up has been vastly different. Things are just moving and flowing at like the fastest rate that they have ever happened. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail like about what I mean when I say that. And I've been able to make massive shifts and massive moves in the last 8 weeks. And I've actually been able to, one of the things that I've been able to do is release 20 pounds in the last 8 weeks. And I have been trying to release weight, not necessarily fully actively, but it has taken up brain space in my mind since 2020. And so the fact that all of a sudden in these last 8 weeks, it's like I literally said to my friend the other day, I was like, it feels like weight is just falling off of me. And while, somebody who is not as self-aware as I am might be like, oh my gosh, like, how is this happening? I'm very, very clear. And I'm very, very like, I know why this is happening. And I have so much clarity on why this is happening now and why I'm experiencing what I've experienced in the last 8 weeks. And what I've unlocked, I feel like I want to talk to you about, because it's possible that there are goals that you have, be it with your business or also your life, right? Like they're so intertwined. And this started for me because I was having a conversation with a friend, I guess 9 weeks ago. And I was like, there is so much on the horizon for me in the next couple of months, in the next few years, as I grow and I evolve. And I don't identify, like the person who is doing all of those things is not living in this body, is not living in a body that feels sluggish all the time, that is so inflamed, I'll insert all of these things that have been going on with me. And so it was just like this moment of realization. And again, there have been many things that have kind of happened to lead up to that and that have also happened since then. And I feel like not enough people talk about like the process of unlocking and how, there definitely can be like this overnight shift, right? This like, I was here and then I did one thing and now I'm here. But I'm actually a much bigger believer in all of the foundations that you've laid leading up to that big unlock moment, those big shifts where everything is radically different in a very short amount of time. And so I'm actually going to take you back to last summer, probably, like end of May, early June. I was planning for the summer, and I had just come back from in April last year April 2025, I hosted a international women's retreat in Punta Cana, and it was the most life-changing experience. Like, it was just a portal being there and experiencing that with those women. And when I came back, I had a really hard time reintegrating back into my everyday. And I got back like late in April, and then May happened, and then at the end of May, I took a trip to Alberta with my daughter, my oldest daughter. We went to see my sister and we explored the mountains, and it was my first girls trip with my daughter. I moved through some really big blocks on that trip as it relates to traveling and some anxiety I have around that. I actually shared about this in my Embody Bliss book, in the emotions chapter. So I had this trip in Alberta, which in itself was also life-changing, just in a lot of different ways. Also, like being in the mountains and experiencing the mountains, if you've ever been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But like the energy in the air is just different. And it's like you everywhere you turn, there's like these mountains that are so vast and they make you feel so small, but in like the most inspiring way. You know, like we hiked to the top of Moraine Lake, or we hiked to the top of the mountain to see Moraine Lake. And it was like we went up so far. It was like 15 minutes on a bus just to get to the top. And we then hiked up even more. And then we got to the top and there were still more ups to go. And it was just like all of those moments, just when I came back from that trip between that and the retreat, I was like, I was dumbfounded. Maybe that's not the right word, but that's the word that I'm thinking of right now. And I was just like, what am I doing? Not a what am I doing moment, as in like I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, but it's just like this made for more, this meant for more, this like, what is the next level that I am unlocking? And I didn't really know what I was kind of searching for, but I remember that there was a moment where I was like, I need to dig back into the work again. And I've said this many times before to other people. I actually wrote it in my book multiple times in multiple books of like, we are always constantly learning and growing and evolving, and the growth journey is never done. But I had just spent a number of years in service. I was just pouring into other people. I was pouring into events. I was pouring into my clients. I was pouring into the retreat experience. And while that filled me up so much, I had kind of like shut off the personal growth for myself space. And part of it had to do with capacity, right? Like I was still healing from burnout, but I just had this moment after these two trips where I was like, okay,
let's take a quick break.
if something in today's episode is landing for you where you literally thought to yourself, okay, this is me, then I want you to listen up. I work with ambitious women and female founders who are done hitting the same invisible wall. The ones that are tired of second guessing themselves, tired of success feeling harder than it should be, and are ready to do the real inner work that actually moves the needle forward. This work is deep, it is transformational, but we clear the mental clutter and we flip the script on the stories that have been running the show. And all of this starts with a simple, free 20-minute connection call. You and me outside of this show and in real life, having conversations about where you might want to go. So if you're ready and something in you kind of already knows that, if you're here listening, then I want you to click on the link below, answer the few questions, book a call, and I would love to meet you. I need to pour back into myself. I need to really deeply, like this summer, this is going to be the summer of Andrea. And this is going to be the summer where I pour back into myself to find the answers for the unsettled feeling that I was feeling. And so I actually started that journey with Renaissance breathwork. So I have a friend, her name is Brittany. If you want to know more about her, just shoot me a DM. I'd be happy to share about her with you. But she has a course called Blissed Out Breath. And I have never really felt called to lean in really deeply to breathwork. And since last summer, I've actually uncovered more things that have opened me up to breath work a little bit more. there was just a lot of fear of like the lack of control around breath work, and that intimidated me, that scared me, and I was just like kind of closed off to it. But she was talking about this course, and she's a good friend of mine. I really trust her. I feel really safe in her space and in her energy. And so I opened up the conversation with her about this breath work. She was talking about using it as a tool for yourself. And so we chatted more about it. It was a course that was over many weeks, and there were different modules to work through. And I ended up saying yes to taking that course. And so over the next, I think it was 12 weeks, maybe a little bit less, every week I was leaning into doing breath work and blissed out breath work. So it's less of like the really deep breath patterns and rhythms that get you into like this almost euphoric kind of like out of body experience state, and more just like really tuning that vagus nerve and really just like those deep inhales, those deep exhales on a bit of a rhythm. And it did kind of, periods of time put me into a little bit of a trance, but it wasn't like, she was calling them like T-Rex arms. If you've ever done breath work, you may have experienced where you're like, your whole body is shaking and convulsing and expelling and whatever it is. It wasn't quite like that. It's a bit more gentle. And so I was doing that throughout the course of the summer. I had taken a pause for a number of years as well in personal growth books and podcasts. And I started leaning back into those. I read this book called Activate Your Future Self, which I've talked about on this show before. And I really leaned into the prompts and the reflections and all of these things in the book as I was reading it. And I really spent last summer just that summer pouring into myself, and it really kind of shifted things for me. It really allowed me to get quiet. And this is the thing, right? Is that like when we are going and going, and I know this, but sometimes even me, right? Like I get caught up in the going and the doing and the creating and the serving that I had forgotten that I need to get quiet with myself. And so I spent that summer getting quiet with myself. I reclaimed my mornings for the first time successfully in my life ever. I have always wanted to be a morning person, and yet I was never a morning person. I was always that mom who was like rushing out of bed, ripping my child out of bed, not ripping, you know what I mean? Like getting my kids out of bed, like hustling quickly, we need to go. Like I never made my bed. I was just like running into the day. And the rest of my days would flow like that. And I was going to bed late at night, and I was snoozing every morning. And I just made this declaration. One of the things that this book asked me to do, and now I use this with my clients a lot, is it's like, what do you see yourself as the person, right? The person that you see yourself doing, or let me back up. The person who is doing all the things that you see yourself doing as your future self, as the next level of yourself, as the expanded version of yourself. Like, what are they doing? And what's the disconnect between her and you? And if there is a disconnect between her and you, much like the conversation that I had with my friend about like, I don't see the woman who's doing all these things in this body. If there's a disconnect there, then it's up to you to close the gap. And I think that, when I was exploring that in the book last year, I had this moment of like total self-ownership. I was like, fuck, Andrea. Like I basically called myself out on my bullshit. I was like, if you want to be a morning person, then you have to get up earlier. You have to not hit snooze. And so little by little, I started setting my alarm 5 minutes earlier, and I was getting out of bed. And I was making my bed. Like I started making my bed every morning. I was, getting a cup of coffee. Oftentimes it was still dark outside, but I'm getting up like an hour before my kids. Like what a precious time. If you do that already, then like what a precious sacred time that is. And I don't always do work during that time. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll get up and I feel really invigorated and excited, and I'll do some client work, or I'll create some content, or I'll do respond to emails or whatever it is. But I don't pressure myself to actually work during that time. I just get up and be. And I journal and I read, or I listen to an activation while I'm making my bed or while I'm drinking my coffee. I've really leaned into this last little bit sitting on the porch and drinking my coffee, in like the crisp air. And it's just like, I just took ownership over so many things again that now all of the dominoes seem to be falling into place as a result of that. So, I mean, that was the summer of 2025, and now here we are in 2026. So what has unlocked for me in the last 8 weeks? As I was leading up to the book launch that happened on March 10th, right around International Women's Day 2026, I was having a lot of feelings coming up around visibility and around being seen and about vulnerability. And so I had to work through those things in order for this launch to be as successful as it was, and to be able to be open to all the things that have happened as a result of that. And I kind of felt a little bit like I'm in a mastermind group with other women and my coach mentor. And I, was saying in that mastermind group, like, I love mastermind spaces. Like, let me just tell you, if you don't already know, the value of being in community with other women who are like on the same vibe as you. I'm actually going to do a total whole other episode about the power of who you surround yourself with and the relationship with other people. But I remember saying in this mastermind space, I was like, what is happening to me? I feel like I'm crumbling. And, you probably maybe have been through something like this before, where it's like you're right on the cusp of something great, of something massive, of something that you've dreamed of that is bigger than you ever thought it would be. And you feel internally like you're falling apart. That's what I felt like. And I felt like there was like at least a solid month. Like, I think the whole month of April, I just cried every single time we were on a mastermind call. And I remember like being, like insecure about taking up space with my tears. Even though I talk about this, I was like insecure of taking up the space of like being vulnerable and showing like how off I felt. But I learned a really big lesson in allowing myself to be seen in that space. And one of the women in this mastermind space is a somatic psychic healer. She is just, I have so many incredible women around me. And she gifted everyone in this mastermind space a body mapping exercise. Again, if you want to know more information about her, her name is Morgan. I'd be happy to share that with you. Just DM me. And she asks us a lot of prompting questions about what we hold in our body, because we all know, right? There's like the intellectual growth and part of us that happens. There's our mind. And then there's our soul, right? We need to pour into ourselves spiritually. And then there's our body. And our body holds on to a lot. And oftentimes we don't know what our body is holding on to. And so near the end of April, early May, I went through this body mapping exercise with her, and we had to identify physical things that we were experiencing and struggling with. And, for me, it's been lower back pain for as long as I can remember. It's been inflammation and bloating for as long as I can remember. I struggle with, like anxiety at certain periods of time throughout my life, because she actually had us map a timeline like all the way back. And then, like I said earlier on in this episode, like I've really been struggling with releasing weight since really like the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. So 6 years, and then from that body mapping session, it kind of uncovered a lot. And then her and I went on to do a one-on-one session. And around the same time, I was also getting blood work done to really understand what was going on with my body. And it turns out iron super fucking low. Like my nutritionist was like, how are you functioning? How are you not exhausted? And in addition to that, inflammation so high in my body. And so all around the same time, I was putting into place all of these, supports that I had actually done before. Well, I hadn't done any somatic stuff before, but the metabolic rebalance, program, lifestyle. I had done that historically before and had some success, but not as much success as I would have liked to. And, reflecting back, I now know that it has everything to do, with my mindset. And so between the somatic healing, the releasing, the working through, the letting go, I let go of so much in that session, that individual session with Morgan. And I've been really pulling back in the breath work stuff that I learned last summer and really leaning back into my activations. And just like my mindset is clearer and sharper than it ever has been before. And so in the last 8 weeks, I've been able to release 20 pounds. And I think it actually has very little to do with the food. So there is a significant overhaul that you do in the types of foods that you're consuming and how you're consuming them. And you consume the right foods for your body based on the blood work that you've done. And so I'm eating foods that I have eaten all along. I've always eaten these foods. I've always eaten quite well. But there has been some honing in that's been happening. But when I say that I was able to release this 20 pounds and it having not a whole lot to do with the food, I think that it actually has everything to do with what I've unlocked in my mindset. I have gotten to this place, kind of like I said with the mornings last summer. It was like I'm in charge, and I needed to take ownership over myself. And that meant every single thing that I was doing. And not from a place of control and not from a place of restriction, but more from a place of like this deep, deep embodiment of like who I am becoming. And until I did that, until I got into this place where I fucking embodied it in every cell of my being, I hadn't been successful up until this point. And now I have been at this insanely fast rate. Like I said, I have unlocked something in the last 8 weeks. I have been moving at rapid speeds with relaunching this podcast, with creating a digital course, with, shifting with offers that I'm doing with my one-on-one clients, with the ideas that I'm having, even in my mastermind group. One of the women, recently was like, Andrea, you are just moving, like the momentum that I am experiencing all boils down to me no longer tolerating and taking my own shit. I just was done with taking it. And so I wanted to record this podcast episode for you to remind you that you hold the power. Now, it's not to say that I did this alone in the sense that I have a coach. I believe in having a coach all the time to bounce things off of. I have supportive people around me, and those have helped to elevate me, to keep me focused. But ultimately, it's come down to me and the choices that I'm making, and the realization that if I want my reality to look a certain way, if you want your reality to look a certain way, then girl, you need to take a good hard look in the mirror and listen to your inner script. What is it saying? Consciously or unconsciously? And how is that a direct reflection of the reality that you are experiencing? Thank you so much for tuning in with me today. I love you oh so much, and I will chat with you next week. Take care. That's a wrap on today's episode. If something you heard hit home for you, share it with someone who you think could resonate with it too. I'd love for you to subscribe to the show and leave a review. Your reviews help this podcast reach more women like you who need it. And as a thank you, if you screenshot your review and send it to me on Instagram at the.balance.bliss, I will send you a special gift as a thank you. Ready to go deeper? Grab my book, Embody Bliss, break free from the shoulds and move into more joy through the link in the show notes. Or if you're curious about working together, your free 20-minute connection call is waiting. Love you for sharing your time with me today. Now go flip that inner script. See you next time.